Konnichiwa. Hello.
I'm Keiko and I'm
I'm Mark Kubumatsu.
Inorganic filters are things like zinc oxide and titanium.
But when you get a disease,
What they love in Russia.
Balo Radio.
Hello guys. Thank you for listening to this week's Bubble Radio episode. My name is Kanan and today I'm going to be doing something different. No, I will not be inviting a guest onto the show. It will just be me. And I'm going to be doing a review episode. Yay! So it's just going to be me and my tea and my plant. And I'm going to be reviewing 5 Japanese episodes. So I'm going to be translating them into English and then summing it up. I'll tell you what we talked about in the episode, and I'll also try to give my opinion on some of the things that we talk about in that particular interview. So if you're listening to this on audio, I do have a YouTube video. Hello guys. I don't know if it's any good looking at my face and watching these videos, but if you want to see the video, then please go onto the YouTube channel of Barbell Radio. Okay, so I don't know if anyone's going to be listening to this, but if you are, then thank you. And thank you to everyone who's been trying to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. It's been so much fun. And also to the guests, thank you for being on the show and making the time and effort to, go onto the show and share your valuable information. So I'm going to be reviewing 5 episodes. So episode 1 will be with Sae Kyo, who is a bikini fitness athlete. And episode 3, which I have done in Japanese, it will be Masahito Yamamoto, who is a medical student at Yokohama City University. Episode 5, Tomohito OSHIRO, who is a super heavyweight Okinawan powerlifting athlete. And episode 7, Koji Yashiki, who is a master's student at Yokohama City University studying economics and sports data analytics. Episode 9, Ayano Shiba, who is also a master's student specializing in neuroscience at Strasbourg University in France. So 5 very special guests. I'm just going to be quickly summing up the things that we have talked about. Also, it is my 3rd attempt at trying to do this. So if I can't do good here, then I seriously don't even know what I'm gonna be doing with myself. Seriously, might have to retire or something already. Okay, so let's get into the review. So episode 1, I invited Sae Kyo onto the episode. She is my university friend. I met her when we were in freshmen. So it's not like I met her through fitness. I met her at school and then we just happened to, love exercising. And she went into the bikini fitness world and I went into powerlifting. So we have some very similar interests. And she just happens to be one of the most successful bikini athletes in Japan. So in 2017 and 2018 JBBF, JBBF is Japan Bodybuilding and Fitness Federation, All Japan Fitness Bikini Competition. She became a champion in her height class, so minus 157 centimeter class. So pretty much she is the best in Japan for her height class. And also she has competed at several world competitions. I believe she went to China and also Romania. And last year she went to Las Vegas to compete in Olympia Amateur, which is probably the biggest well-known physique and bodybuilding competition in the world. So good on her. She works very, very, very hard and we always give each other advices in regards to just even our personal lives, as well as, training and diet and stuff like that. So I really do have fun being friends with her. So I'm sure everybody knows what bikini fitness is, but to those who doesn't, I'm just going to quickly explain it. So it is a category of physique exhibition events for women. And what they pretty much do is they wear 2-piece bikini, super high heels, and then they walk on super pair of high heels, and they pretty much walk on stage, do a few poses and show off their physique. And I think what makes bikini fitness different from other physique exhibitions such as bodybuilding and women's physique is that things like muscularity vascularity, muscular definition and separation, dryness and or dieted leanness will not be considered acceptable if displayed by a bikini fitness competitor and therefore must be marked down. So it's not a matter of, I believe, just building the muscle and gaining more mass. It's also about representing your whole figure and, you know, also adding some female aspect to it. So everything, your hair, your makeup, how you present yourself and how you walk on stage and, you know, and stuff like that. I guess that it's a whole package. So that gets judged as well. So if you look on the internet, like some of the bikini fitness athletes, they're beautiful. Like their figure is just, they're curvy and, you know, the way they walk on stage and they look really happy and I don't know. It's a lot more feminine compared to other physique exhibitions, in my opinion. Yep. So obviously you don't get this physique overnight. So it is something that you really do have to work hard for, even if it's training or dieting as well. And the diet aspect of this sport is also pretty extreme. So they go through, I believe, two seasons. So they go through a bulking season and they go through a cutting season. During the bulk, I believe they eat a lot of calories, excess calories, and try to build their muscle mass. As well as, you know, it's kind of inevitable that you put on fat while you're trying to gain muscle as well if you're going to be eating. And during the cutting season, you drop your calories and try to drop your body fat while still trying to maintain your muscle mass. So I think it'll make sense that you consume a lot of protein during bulk and cutting so that you don't drop your muscle mass. So I did ask her about her dieting strategy, and she doesn't have like a set diet that she does, but she does count calories and she tries to limit her fat intake, but she still does consume carbs, especially around her training sessions. Yes. And I also asked her if she's ever done ketogenic diets before, and yeah, she has tried it, but she also works as an instructor, so doing that kind of diet apparently was very fatiguing and she couldn't maintain that diet. So yeah, she doesn't do keto or anything. And also that brought us into the topic of her all-in diet. If you've been following her Instagram, maybe you were able to see some of her all-in dieting journey. And what she does is that she eats whatever she wants until satiation. And the reason why she did that is because she always felt super tired, mentally fatigued, because she couldn't eat whatever she wanted during her prep. And that really did affect her mental state after she got off the prep. And after her competition, she was still hungry and she wanted to eat everything and she was just really unhappy. So what she did was she just decided to just let it go and eat whatever she wanted until she was full. And I believe she got this idea. We also talk about this in the episode. She also got this idea from a YouTuber, and she's also a PhD, Stephanie Buttermore. I don't know if you have seen her YouTube channel, but she also, I believe she invented this kind of diet, this all-in diet. But Stephanie, on the other hand, she actually suffered from a medical condition called hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is a condition where your menstrual cycle goes absent for 3 months or more. And apparently there are 3 contributing factors of hypothalamic amenorrhea. One is underfueling and not eating enough to support all the activities that your body is going through. Number 2 is over-exercising, so too much exercise. And number 3 is mental stress. So it is a medical condition. But Sae didn't lose her period or anything like that, but she does claim that she had uncontrollable urges to eat after her competition in 2018 and realized that it was just a good idea to try out this, eating strategy. And one thing that she really did struggle with this diet it's not the diet itself, because you're pretty much releasing all the urges and stuff like that. But for her to put what she's eating on the internet, she does have a lot of following. I believe she has over 24,000 followers on Instagram. And for her to, take a picture of what she's eating, or the junk food, or how much she's overeating, and putting that on social media, she really struggled doing that, because she felt like she was promoting overeating, and she didn't want her followers to get the wrong information. We also go into the discussion of social media and how scary and misleading it could be. She was also telling me that when she first started on Instagram and she did put up pictures of food, there'll be people commenting and being like, oh, I love how you're dieting and I really would like to follow what you're doing. And regards to the all-in diet, not every one of her followers can relate. So she really struggled sharing, thinking of what to share and what not to share so that people don't get the wrong information. Yeah, so we talk about that. So her training, her diet, and her social media platform. And I believe she's eating fairly clean now, and her appetite has settled down a little bit, which was the goal of changing her diet to the all-in diet. So yeah, I think that's where the conversation ended. If you want to follow Sae, she has YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. I will link all the things in the description of this episode, so make sure you check that out. So the next interview, I interviewed Masahito Yamamoto, who is now a 5th year medical student at Yokohama City University. And I obviously met him at school when I was in my freshman year. And we actually met through a mutual friend, and, we used to hang out, a few times actually. And after that, he's a medical student and I am not a medical student. So we did our own thing and we didn't see each other for like 3 or 4 years. And then a few months ago, I was training at my school gym with my sister, and he was there. And I was like, oh, should I talk to him? Went up to him, talked to him. And we were like, wow, we haven't seen each other for a while, blah, 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 blah. And then I just pretty much asked him to be on my podcast, since I know that he's very passionate about health and things like that. So pretty much invited him on the podcast on the spot, and he was like, yeah, sure, why not? So we did this. And what I pretty much talked about with Yamamoto-kun is what kind of diseases would be on the rise in the future in Japan, because we know we're going through a lot of changes. We got introduced to the Western diet. We're changing how we eat. And also, I believe we're becoming more inactive since everything is becoming convenient. For example, like Uber Eats and stuff like that. You don't really have to move in order to do things. So I was just wondering what, with those changes, there also must be changes within our bodies, because the environment is changing. How is our body going to react? So we discussed about this, and he brought up a few things. So rise in metabolic conditions such as obesity and type 2 diabetes. And obviously worldwide obesity has nearly tripled since 1975, and it is seemingly becoming a huge thing as well. Even in this coronavirus pandemic, people who do have pre-existing conditions, especially obesity and type 2 diabetes, seems to be doing a lot worse than those who doesn't have pre-existing conditions. I believe it was in a study of nearly 17,000 hospital patients with COVID-19 in the UK. Those who were obese, so a BMI of over 30, had a 33% greater risk of dying than those who were not obese. And I know that age is the biggest factor in deciding who the mortality rate, pretty much, of COVID-19. But obesity and things like hypertension, type 2 diabetes seems to play a big role in that as well. And also, Yamamoto-kun brings up colorectal cancer or colon cancer as an increasing disease in Japan. And this also makes sense because colorectal cancer is not just a genetic, influenced by genetic factors. It is also influenced by the environment. And I did some research as well, and obesity is one of the most important risk factors for colorectal cancer. Consequently, increasing evidence suggests that diabetes is associated with elevated risk of colorectal cancer as well. So that is another rising disease. And also we go into the topic of sarcopenia, which is a degenerative loss of skeletal muscle and strength. So as people get older, people tend to lose their muscle, and to the point where it is affecting their daily life. And he also brings up a good fact that sarcopenia, people who does have sarcopenia, also makes them prone to other further injuries and medical conditions as well. A good example of this is a meta-analysis in 2019 that concluded that sarcopenic patients had a significant high risk of falls and fractures. So less muscles, they're more likely to fall, meaning they're more likely to be hospitalized. And when you do get hospitalized, obviously you don't move as much. So you are less hungry. And especially for the elderly, if you're not hungry and if you don't eat, that opens doors for things like nutrient deficiency and other conditions as well. So that is a big thing that we do need to keep in mind. Also, other than that, we discussed mechanisms of fat loss and diets, and I tell them that there is things like the carnivore diet that's been going around a lot, and we also discussed the ketogenic diet as well. And if you're not familiar with the ketogenic diet, it is pretty much you limit carbohydrate consumption so that your body's energy source doesn't come from glucose. However, it comes from fat. So then this fat is pretty much converted into ketones in the body, and I believe this is where the name came from, ketogenic diets. And I don't know, I asked his thoughts about it, and he doesn't seem like he is very supportive. He's not very supportive of the ketogenic diet, mainly because it causes what is called ketoacidosis, where your blood becomes acidic, which is a life-threatening condition. And I'm not an expert in ketoacidosis, and neither is he. So we did get into the discussion, but I don't know, in the studies that I have come across, I don't see many studies that links ketoacidosis with ketogenic diets in non-diabetic and non-lactating people. So if you're listening to this and you'd like to share some information or opinion, then feel free to, comment or DM or whatever. So Yamamoto-kun is pretty against ketogenic diets, but I don't see much of a problem with it. And there's been tons of studies done on it, and there doesn't seem to be many super dangerous side effects to doing this diet. So what I think about diets is that if it does fit your lifestyle and your preferences, then I believe that if you're maintaining a caloric deficit, then a lot of things will work as long as it's not, crazy. And if it's consistent and you can maintain the diet, then I guess it is up to you to choose what kind of diet you want to go on. Okay, so episode 5 was Nito-san. His real name is Tomohito OSHIRO, but people call him just Nito-san. And we actually recorded this at Nahajimu when I visited Okinawa with my friend Sae, who I did interview on the first episode. And we met up with Nito-san in Okinawa. We went out drinking, and we actually ended up drinking until we started from 8 p.m. and we stopped drinking at 8 a.m. And I have heard that Okinawans drink a lot, but I was definitely underestimating this. But no, definitely was fun. And so we ended up drinking until 8 a.m. I went home, had a quick nap. We left the house to meet up with him again to do the interview. So when I was doing this interview, my head was just spinning. And I kind of do regret that because I did want to be in the best condition. I wanted my mind to be like sharp. But I don't know, it just ended up being a good episode, so I'm very thankful for him for that. And we talk about his lifting history and, you know, about powerlifting community and what he thinks of it. Well, he's not... What is funny about Nito-san is that he's not like a champion Japanese lifter or anything like that. I mean, there are a lot of people who are stronger than him, but everybody, there is probably no one in the powerlifting community that doesn't know who he is, and he's so respected. And I just, you know, I've always wondered what is it with this person that makes him such a respectful guy. And when I did meet him, that made me realize that he contributes to a lot of the powerlifting scenes. He was helping out the powerlifting association in Japan, and also he's a very honest person. So he puts up a lot of his thoughts on Twitter, whether people like that or not. And I believe a lot of influencers have to adjust what they say, because, you know, they're afraid of getting attacked. But that's not like Nito-san. He just puts a lot of his information out there, and if they want to argue, then he lets them argue. But he's real and he speaks his mind. So I guess, like, I don't know. And he's he knows a lot about the community. So that is why I believe people can really trust him in the things that he is saying. And also, he's just a really funny and generous guy. Like, when we did go out to dinner, we went out twice to dinner. He just pretty much, he didn't let us pay for anything, which is just like crazy. And it was just me and her. It was like 4 people, and I don't know, he was just happy and super generous. And also, I asked him, what is one thing that you tell people who wants to start powerlifting? He pretty much said, you know, powerlifters might come across as, you know, this antisocial, shy people. But when you get to know them, and if you show interest in the sport, then they are so friendly and all the lifters are willing to help you, which is like so true. But it's such a shame that a lot of lifters do come across to non-lifters in that way, especially in Japan. Because, you know, Japan, powerlifting gyms seems to be very closed off. You know, it's like an explicit place where you can't interrupt, and it's like only strong people, elite lifters can only start powerlifting. And I don't know, there seems to be that kind of like this mindset that we give off to people, but it's not like that. So he believes that if we could kind of like fix that, be more open to newcomers who wants to start powerlifting, then it could be a bigger sport in Japan. I also asked his opinion on what he thinks of the new powerlifting qualifying total for 2021. Now, if you don't know about the qualifying total, that is the number that JPA, so Japan Powerlifting Association, the number that they set. And pretty much, if you want to compete in the national competition of classic powerlifting, you need to out total that number in order to be able to compete. So what we have seen in Japan is the crazy rise of numbers of competitors in powerlifting. And I think it was 2018 Japan Classic Powerlifting competition. There were so many competitors that we had to do the competition for 3 days, 3 whole days. And it's crazy, right? So what they did was that in order to cut the number of athletes, they decided to raise this total, this qualifying total, so that less people are able to qualify. So only the people who have out-totaled that number gets to compete, the more competitive people. So what they did was that they raised this qualifying total by 100 kilos. And for the 74 and 83, they raised this 105 to 110 kilos. So and there have been a lot of mixed opinion in regards to this. People are like, okay, bring it on, because, there'll be, powerlifting will be more competitive. And there will be other opinions where they're like, oh, I feel so discouraged because I can no longer compete in the national event because my total is not that high. So there's been mixed number of opinion. And I asked this with Nito-san, the guest, as well. And he pretty much is like very happy that JPA has risen this total. But he thinks that they could have done it slowly instead of, instead of jumping 100 kilos in 1 year. So yeah, but he's very happy with this. And if you feel pretty much discouraged by the fact that you can no longer compete because the qualifying total is too high, then you can compete pretty much at other competition, like smaller competition, regional meets and stuff like that. So, and if you have that kind of mentality, then you're not supposed to be competing on national stage anyways. So he believed that it really did cut out people who are, who doesn't have that champion mindset, is what he thinks. I don't know, maybe it's just the way of me summing it up. And also what JPA could do better, what the Japan Powerlifting Association can do better to promote powerlifting, is to make more use of social media. So I believe JPA and also the Tokyo Powerlifting Association, they created like an Instagram account and they promote powerlifting and they put up photos of athletes and stuff like that. And people love it. So he thinks that they should do that more. And also to create some more laid back events that beginners could easily compete. That would probably get people to, be motivated in just having fun and trying to compete in this sport. Yep, so also he does have Instagram and Twitter as well. So it is in Japanese, but if you want to follow, then yeah, please. I will be putting that in the description. Okay, so let's move on to the episode 7, where I interviewed Koji Yashiki, who's a master's student at Yokohama City University who is studying economics. And his history of how he got to that university is very interesting because he actually went into a big Japanese company, realized that he didn't like it, and then he ended up quitting that job. And in Japan, it is pretty normal for you to, if you graduate university, to go into a university, like a big company, and keep working there. That is like the ideal way of living in Japan. But he ended up quitting because he didn't like it. And he had no idea what he was going to do. He told me that he was going to try to go to Australia for working holiday. But he ended up talking to his old professor where he did his bachelor's degree at. And his professor pretty much welcomed him into coming into his lab to pretty much do research on sports analytics. Yeah. And we hit off this episode with him explaining what economics is. And one interesting thing is that he says that the biggest misconception about economics, the study of economics, is that people think that it is a study of money, which is not exactly what it is. And in fact, it is a study about human behavior through production, consumption, and trade of goods and services. And he explains that money is just, it just happens to be a good way to witness this activity. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And he also moves into the key points of economics, and he explains the difference between causation and correlation. So what he pretty much says is that causation means that something A affects B directly. So if A increases, then that causes A to increase. Whereas with correlation, B happened to increase at the same timing as A increase. So they don't directly have to influence each other. So he also brings up a piece of information or data that people who has high blood sodium levels has a higher income. So hearing this data, you think, okay, if I just ate tons of salty food, then would my income just automatically go up? By just hearing this, you think these two are causation, that they influence each other. But this is clearly wrong, right? Just because you eat salt doesn't mean that you make more money. And the way that they represent this data is kind of manipulated. And how can this be explained? So people who have higher sodium levels are usually older in age. And people who are older in age usually makes a lot more money, therefore a higher income. So it's not that the sodium is affecting your income. It's the age that is affecting it. So age is like the middle factor in this, right? So therefore, this is a correlation, not a causation. And it is really important for you to keep this in mind because data can really easily be manipulated. And also this kind of thing is used in false marketing as well. People who drink more milk are more likely to become athletes and stuff like that. You really need to differentiate what is causation and correlation. And also the second half of the interview, he introduces his paper on baseball swing rate and its association with loss aversion theory. And loss aversion theory pretty much is saying that the pain of losing has more psychological effect than the pleasure of winning or gaining. So for example, if you are a parent and you wanted your son Patrick to do his homework, it is more effective if you said, you'll take away his video game, which is obviously a loss for him, than to say, I'll buy you a new set of games, which is a win for Patrick. So it means that it means that Patrick, all these names, will work harder if he thinks about losing, the pain of losing, than he thinks about the pleasure of winning. And Yashiki-kun also sees this in baseball swing rate. And if you are aware of the rules of baseball, you'll probably know but when the batting average, which is how many times players successfully hit the ball, is known to define if you're an elite player or not. And it is pretty much known that people who are above the batting average of 0.3 is considered a good player, and people who are below, whose batting average is below 0.3, is like not as outstanding. So in his own study, he found that people who are below this 0.3 batting average line seems to swing more in the last part of the seasons to avoid them staying below 0.3, which is in this case is considered losing if you stay below 0.3, because social pressure, and he doesn't want people to think that he's not a good athlete and things like that. So it kind of says that people are more willing to take risks so that they don't lose. And on the other hand, what was more interesting is that people who have the batting average of who already has the batting average of above 0.3 at the end of the season, they swung less, meaning they take less risks. So that was a very interesting to link, loss aversion with batting average. So, we also go into the discussion of sport analytics and where it's going to go in the future. And, the analysis of data has been used everywhere nowadays, especially in sports as well. They track, people use this for rehab purposes, and they estimate when is the highest risk for athletes to get injured and stuff like that. And so, how will data analysis influence the future of sports? Like if data could know what you could do to have the highest performance, then would you still need a coach? Like we talk about those things as well. So first, it could have been like data did a lot of positive things for the sports, but to use data too much, maybe it could do a lot of harm as well. Maybe it could, take away the exciting human aspect of what sport is. So that was very interesting. If you want to look at his Twitter, he does have Twitter as well. Okay, so episode 9, I got to speak with Ayano Shiba, who is also a master's student studying neuroscience at Strasbourg University in France. And in this discussion, we bring up Alzheimer's disease as the main topic. And Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia that causes problems with memory, thinking, and behavior. Symptoms usually develop slowly and get worse over time, becoming severe enough to interfere with daily tasks. And this disease is very common in people 65 years old or older. And I really wanted to bring up this topic because Japan has an aging population, and obviously the more older people, the more the population of older people, the more people who will be diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So I thought that this is something that would be a good topic to bring up in Japanese. Well, Ayano and I usually speak in English, but I got to speak about this in Japanese, so it did kind of feel weird speaking to her in Japanese. So global data's Alzheimer's epidemiology analysis showed that Japan will see an increase of total prevalent Alzheimer's disease cases in those ages 60 years and older from 3.5 million cases in 2016 to 4.9 million cases in 2026, meaning that Japan will have the fastest growing prevalent cases of Alzheimer's disease. And the mechanism of Alzheimer's disease is not clearly understood, but what is happening inside the brain when someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease is pretty much brain atrophy or neuronal cell death is the prominent pathological feature of Alzheimer's disease. And Ayano describes that the definitive mechanism of Alzheimer's disease is not yet clear. However, it can mostly be described as a buildup of what is called beta amyloid plaques, which is a naturally occurring protein clump that seems to influence the onset of Alzheimer's disease. And the reasons for this could be that she brought up 1, the role of genetic factors such as APOE4. That's some of the genetic factors that she does bring up. And 2 is lifestyle issues. She also explains that exercise could help prevent the onset of Alzheimer's disease in 2 different ways. And 1 is by increasing an enzyme that breaks down these beta amyloid plaques. Specifically, neprilysin is elevated during physical activity, which helps it break down the beta amyloid plaques. And the second one is by a hormone called irisin. You've probably heard of it, that is released by your muscle cells when you are exercising. And that helps, it prevents your brain cells from dying pretty much. So that is 2 ways how exercise, and there are many ways, but that's just like the 2 key points that she did bring up. So I invited Ayano to talk about this particular topic because I know that Japan chooses to alienate those that are different, especially, unfortunately, for those who are disabled or people who are mentally ill or someone who has a medical condition. And it is definitely, mental illnesses especially, is a taboo topic to talk about in Japan. And I know Alzheimer's disease is not a mental illness, but I can see people maybe reacting in a similar way purely by the fact that they don't understand about the disease. And the reason why I think it is a taboo topic and that people do choose to alienate them is I just found these 2 big cases that really did bother me. One was a case in 2017 where parents locked up their daughter for 10 years in the back of their shed, and they found the daughter dead. The police found the daughter dead at the age of 33, and she was, I believe she froze to death, and when they found her, she was 19 kilos in weight. And the reason why the parents did this was because the daughter was schizophrenic, so she had a mental condition, and they didn't want the daughter to go out into the society and, face the embarrassment or the social backlash of whatever it is. So that does say a lot about what some people think about mental illnesses in Japan. And also, you will definitely know this, in 2016 there was a massive a killing where a guy broke into a care home and stabbed 19 people who had disabilities, just for the fact that he thought that people with disabilities don't deserve to live. And that also became a news, and that just kind of like speaks out what some people are thinking. And Alzheimer's disease is something that is inevitable, and we have to deal with it in the future, because Japan seems to be going through Japan has an aging population, plus people are more likely to have Alzheimer's disease when they are older. So it is definitely an inevitable problem in the future. That's why I kind of do feel really sensitive about this. And even just studying this about this particular disease myself and talking about it with Ayano really helped me understand what is going to be happening in the future and how we can really deal with this topic. And knowing these things doesn't do you any harm, and it will definitely give you more clear insights on what some people might be going through. And maybe someone who has dementia. Maybe it's your parents or it's your grandparents. So it is definitely not something that is far away. It might actually be, someone next to you might be suffering from dementia. So it's definitely not a bad thing to know. Yeah, so a little bit of a heavy topic to end up on, but I feel very honored to talk to all these guests, and I really do appreciate them for making the time and effort to come onto the show. I know it's science topic like this, it's not easy to just turn up and be like, hey, I'm going to speak to you. They really have to research on the topic and think what they're going to say. So it's not an easy thing, so thank you. In the next 10 as well, I have some very exciting guests. I think it might be a little bit on the powerlifting side. I did invite a lot of powerlifting athletes. So I'm sorry if you're not into powerlifting, but it could be very interesting. It's not only the topic of powerlifting, it's strength training, and it could definitely benefit you in some shape or form. I say this every time, but if there are guests that you would like to see on the show, then feel free to message me at Bubble Radio on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Now, thank you if you listen to this all the way till the end. And next week will be a Japanese episode with a powerlifter, Tomo-san. So look forward to that as well. And I will be inviting my sister onto the show, and as she is a student in Hokkaido University studying neuroscience. So stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next week. Bye bye.